Hello everyone, my name is Koorosh Torkaman, and my presentation is on Iran and United States relations. The reason I decided to do my presentation on this topic was because me and my family moved to the United States from Iran when I was at a really young age, and I was really interested in this topic, so I decided to do my presentation on this. The first quick thing I want to talk about is the United States and Iran get a really bad rep because so many people find it really hard to believe that they used to be allies at some point. Now, this is due to the recent relationship they've had, and the recent events that have occurred between the two countries. But believe it or not, they did used to be allies at one point. To summarize everything for you guys, real quick, the history of relations between the U.S. and Iran dates all the way back to 1953. The U.S. was allies with Iran until the Shah of Iran had to flee. When I say Shah, I mean the King of Iran, and here's a picture of him on this slide. Later on in the presentation, we will talk about why the king had to flee. Okay, so the beginning of the relationship of United States and Iran was when the U.S. and British intelligence agencies helped the Iranian military overthrow the Prime Minister of Iran. Now on the slide, I have a picture of the Prime Minister of Iran. So the only reason that Iran was able to maintain the power of the king / Shah was due to its ally, the U.S. So the U.S. helped the Shah stay in power. Jumping right on in the year of 1954, Iran signed a major oil agreement, and this was called the Consortium Agreement of 1954. This gave the U.S., the U.K., and France 40% ownership of the nationalized oil industry for the next 25 years. This was one of Iran's first major international agreements. This slide, I just wanted to talk about how there was lots of events between the U.S. and Iran after this oil agreement. However, unfortunately, I can't talk about all of them. I would love to, but this presentation would be over a few days long. So I'm going to talk about some other major topics, and hopefully you guys enjoy the presentation. But another thing I wanted to state before we move on is Iran was part of the original countries that established OPEC. And to this day, the country of Iran is still one of the biggest suppliers of oil in our world. The next big event I want to talk about was something really amazing to me and to a lot of people. It was when a U.S. president stepped foot in Iran to have a meeting with the king of Iran. The reason that President Nixon did go to Iran to have a meeting with the Shah was because they needed help protecting U.S. security interests in the Middle East. And in return for Iran's help, President Nixon promised Iran that they can buy any non-nuclear weapons from the United States if they want. The year of 1979 was basically the end of Iran and U.S. relations. It did go on to 1981, but 1979 is generally known as the end year of Iran and U.S. relations. This was due to the Iranian Revolution. The Shah was forced to flee the country due to so many ongoing riots and protests in Iran to overthrow the Shah and allow the Muslim people and Muslim leaders to take over the country. These leaders were called Khomeinis, and eventually they were obviously successful in taking over the country because the Shah was forced to flee. And the Shah did also have cancer too. He fled to the U.S. Another major event that contributed to the end of relations between the United States and Iran was the Iranian hostage crisis. This was when a group of students took 52 hostages and held them at the U.S. Embassy in the capital of Iran, Tehran. They held these hostages and they wanted the U.S. to extradite the Shah so that they could kill him. Eventually, the hostages were later released. And on this important date was when Washington decided to cut ties with Iran. They decided to sanction Iranian oil imports. They decided to freeze Iranian assets. And this was basically the end of the Iran and U.S. relations. At least the good relations. Here's my list of sources. Thank you so much for taking the time to enjoy this presentation.